Picture this: action, adventure, and the wildest ride through the events of our past. Enjoy the show, but don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe.
India. From the Indus Valley's masterful urban grids, India forged ancient empires, won epic independence, and wove boundless cultural diversity. Eternal beacon, India has had countless wars. One such war was the invasion of the Greeks in the year 326. Picture this: a young Macedonian conqueror stands at the banks of the Beas River in 326 BCE, his exhausted army refusing to march another step eastward. Behind him lies the greatest empire the world has ever seen. Ahead, the mysterious lands of India, unconquered and defiant. But here's what your history books probably didn't tell you. Alexander the Great wasn't the first Western invader to set his sights on India. He was following a playbook written 2 centuries earlier by another empire that had already cracked the code to controlling the Indian subcontinent. What if I told you that the Persian Empire had already established a systematic method of extracting wealth from India that would make modern corporations jealous? That they'd figured out how to generate revenue equivalent to billions in today's currency from just one region of ancient India? And that the blueprint they created would be copied by every single invader for the next 2,000 years? This isn't just ancient history. This is the story of how 2 of history's greatest empires collided with the Indian subcontinent, setting in motion economic and political patterns that still echo in today's global power struggles. The invasions might have happened 2,500 years ago, but the strategies, the resistance, and most importantly, the consequences feel disturbingly modern. To understand this collision of civilizations, we need to rewind to the 6th century BCE. The world was experiencing its first wave of globalization. The Achaemenid Persian Empire, under Cyrus the Great and his successors, had swallowed up most of the known world from Egypt to Central Asia. Meanwhile, in India, the Mahajanapadas' 16 powerful kingdoms were locked in their own struggles for dominance. But here's where it gets interesting. Northwestern India wasn't some isolated backwater. It was the jackpot of the ancient world. The region of Gandhara, modern-day Afghanistan and Pakistan, controlled the vital trade routes between East and West. Taxila, its capital, was essentially the ancient world's Singapore, a hub where Chinese silk met Roman gold, where Indian spices traveled to Persian tables, and where ideas flowed as freely as goods. The rulers of these Indian kingdoms weren't primitive chiefs. They were sophisticated monarchs running complex economies. King Ambi of Taxila commanded armies equipped with war elephants, the ancient equivalent of tanks. The Kingdom of Porus controlled territories that generated agricultural surpluses that could feed millions. These weren't just territories to be conquered. They were economic engines waiting to be harnessed. And this is where our story takes its first unexpected turn. The Persian invasion of India wasn't really an invasion in the traditional sense. It was something far more sophisticated and far more insidious. It began around 518 BCE, when Darius I, the great organizer of the Persian Empire, turned his attention eastward. But Darius wasn't interested in bloody conquest. He'd learned from his predecessors that destroying a region's economy meant destroying its value. Instead, he dispatched someone unexpected, not a general, but an explorer. Scylax of Karyanda, a Greek navigator in Persian service, was sent on what might be history's first corporate reconnaissance mission. His job? Navigate the Indus River from the mountains to the sea, mapping not just the geography, but the economic potential of the region. Think of it as ancient market research, complete with resource assessments and trade route analysis. What Scylax discovered changed everything. The Indus Valley wasn't just fertile, it was phenomenally productive. The annual floods created agricultural yields that dwarfed anything in Persia. The population density meant a massive tax base. The established trade networks meant instant integration into the Persian economic system. Based on Scylax's intelligence, Darius made a calculated decision. He wouldn't conquer all of India. He would take just enough to control the economic choke points, while leaving the rest autonomous enough to keep producing wealth. It was imperialism too, centuries before anyone had a word for it. The Persian conquest of the Indus region was swift and surgical. By 515 BCE, the territories of Gandhara and the Indus Valley had been incorporated as the 20th satrapy of the Persian Empire. But here's what made this different from typical ancient conquests. The Persians didn't destroy the existing power structures. They co-opted them. Local rulers who submitted kept their thrones. They just had new job titles now: Persian satraps. The existing tax collection systems kept intact, just redirected to Persian coffers. The trade routes, not only preserved but expanded and protected by Persian military might. The numbers are staggering. According to Herodotus, the Indian satrapy paid an annual tribute of 360 talents of gold dust. To put that in perspective, that's roughly 10 tons of gold per year. In today's values, we're talking about $600 million annually from just one province. It was the highest tribute of any satrapy in the Persian Empire. More than Egypt, more than Babylon. But the Persians extracted more than just gold. Indian soldiers, particularly archer units, were conscripted into the Persian army. Indian war elephants appeared in Persian military campaigns as far away as Greece. Indian craftsmen and their techniques spread throughout the empire. The Persians had turned India into not just a cash cow, but a military and technological asset. This is where the story takes another twist. The conquest created something unprecedented. The first truly transcontinental economic system. Indian merchants could now travel safely from the Ganges to the Mediterranean under Persian protection. New technologies flowed eastward. Persian irrigation techniques revolutionized Indian agriculture. The Aramaic script influenced the development of the Kharosthi script in northwestern India. For nearly 2 centuries, this system hummed along profitably. Then, in 334 BCE, everything changed. A two-year-old Macedonian king named Alexander crossed the Hellespont with 35,000 men, declaring war on the Persian Empire. Within 4 years, he had brought the Achaemenid Empire to its knees. And then, following the Persian roadmap, he turned toward India. But Alexander made a crucial miscalculation. He assumed India would fold as easily as the Persian territories had. He didn't understand that the Persian control of India had been economic, not military. The Persians had ruled through accommodation and integration. Alexander came as a pure conqueror. The resistance he met was unlike anything he'd faced before. At the Hydaspes River in 326 BCE, he encountered King Porus and his army. For the first time, Alexander's forces faced war elephants in significant numbers. 200 of them, according to ancient sources. The battle was won, but at a cost that shook the Macedonian army. But it wasn't the military resistance that broke Alexander's invasion. It was something more fundamental. His soldiers, who had marched from Macedonia to India, simply refused to go further. At the Beas River, they mutinied. They'd heard rumors of the vast kingdoms that lay beyond the Nanda Empire with its 200,000 infantry, 20,000 cavalry, and 2,000 war chariots. The Greek invasion of India lasted less than 2 years. Alexander's death in 323 BCE ended any chance of consolidation. Within a generation, Greek power in India had evaporated like morning dew. But the impact of these invasions, Persian and Greek, would ripple through centuries. The immediate aftermath was chaos, but from that chaos emerged something remarkable. The invasions had inadvertently created the conditions for India's first continental empire. A young Indian warrior named Chandragupta Maurya, who had possibly met Alexander himself, learned from both invaders. He adopted Persian administrative techniques and Greek military tactics, combining them with Indian political philosophy to create the Mauryan Empire. Within a few years of Alexander's death, Chandragupta had not only expelled the remaining Greek garrisons, but had pushed westward, taking territories from Alexander's successor, Seleucus. The student had become the master. India had learned the imperial game and was now playing it better than its teachers. But the real fallout was cultural and economic. The invasions had created permanent corridors of exchange. Greek artistic styles merged with Buddhist themes to create Gandhara art. Persian architectural techniques influenced Indian palace construction. The concept of standardized coinage, introduced by the Persians and reinforced by the Greeks, revolutionized Indian commerce. Trade networks established during the Persian period and expanded during the Greek invasion became the foundation for the Silk Road. Indian numerals, including the concept of zero, would travel these routes westward, eventually revolutionizing mathematics in the Islamic world and Europe. Indian steel, renowned for its quality, became a sought-after commodity from Rome to China. The invasions also triggered a philosophical revolution. The encounter with foreign powers sparked intense debate about governance, identity, and resistance. The Arthashastra, India's treatise on statecraft written during this period, shows clear influences from Persian administrative practices while developing uniquely Indian theories of power and economics. What's truly fascinating is how subsequent invaders tried to replicate the Persian-Greek playbook, often with diminishing returns. The Kushans, the Huns, the Arabs, the Turks, even the British, all followed variations of the same strategy: control the northwestern passages, co-opt local elites, extract economic value, impose administrative systems. But each successive invasion faced the law of diminishing returns. India had developed antibodies to foreign domination. The Rajputs created military cultures specifically designed to resist invasion. The Delhi Sultanate turned the invasion route into a fortified barrier. The Mughals succeeded by becoming Indian rather than remaining foreign. The patterns established in these ancient invasions are surprisingly relevant today. Modern Afghanistan and Pakistan, the ancient invasion route, remain geopolitical flashpoints. The struggle to control trade routes between East and West continues, just with oil pipelines and shipping lanes instead of caravan routes. The Persian model of economic imperialism, controlling resources while allowing local autonomy, sounds remarkably like modern neo-colonialism. International corporations extracting value while maintaining local power structures? That's the Persian satrapy system with a contemporary paint job. Even the Greek failure contains modern lessons. Military superiority without economic integration and cultural understanding leads to inevitable withdrawal. Sound familiar? Every major power that has tried to control Afghanistan in the last 2 centuries has learned Alexander's lesson the hard way. So what can we learn from these 2,500-year-old invasions? First, economic control is more sustainable than military occupation. The Persians controlled parts of India for 2 centuries through trade and taxation. Alexander's military conquest lasted 2 years. Second, successful integration requires cultural exchange, not just political domination. The lasting impacts of these invasions came from the fusion of ideas, not the imposition of foreign systems. Third, geography is destiny, but knowledge is power. The northwestern passages into India have shaped thousands of years of history, but understanding these patterns allows us to break them. Here's the uncomfortable truth. We're living through another version of this same story. Global supply chains, economic interdependence, cultural exchange backed by military power. It's the Persian model on a planetary scale. The question isn't whether this system will face its own Alexander moment, but when and how. Will we learn from history, or are we doomed to repeat it? The invasions of ancient India teach us that empires rise through economic innovation, but fall through military overreach. That cultural exchange enriches all parties, but cultural domination destroys value. That the conquered often become the conquerors by learning and adapting. As you watch today's global powers jostle for control of trade routes and resources, remember the banks of the Beas River, where the ancient world's greatest conqueror was stopped, not by enemy armies, but by the limits of imperial ambition itself. What patterns do you see repeating in today's world? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the patterns of history that shape our present and future.